Hi there, dear mommies. This is Sherry Hayes with momdelights.com. I'm the homeschooling mom of 15 children, been doing it for over 3 decades. And today I want to bring something to you that will help and bless you and encourage you. So go ahead and wash some dishes, do some laundry, whatever you need to do, and listen as we dive into the good life in Jesus. Today, we're going to talk about how homeschooling is like an elephant. And how is it like an elephant? First of all, in outcome, and second of all, in perception, right? So education itself is huge. It pretty much covers everything and all of life, doesn't it? It's huge, it's colossal, it's mammoth. It's like a huge elephant. We think we have encapsulated it by saying it takes approximately 16 years to be educated, right? But even this is too much to think about when you're homeschooling, right? Because we actually get overwhelmed when we think, I've got 12 years plus, right, to take this child and educate this child. And we try to take it on like in the same day that we decided to do it. We're like, we've got this whole huge thing. It's like this huge elephant in front of us. And so we go to the websites to purchase like the preschool, the kindergarten type materials, and the flashcards that are like for basic edition. Also sell the calculus textbooks, and we go, oh, it just seems so big, doesn't it? Boy, I tell you what, I still get that way every once in a while, but not as much. Okay, then we have our little tiny child who's just learning these things. Little Johnny sits down, and when he writes, it looks nothing like in the videos and in the pictures online, right? His lines are wobbly, and they go out of bounds, and if he can't write, how is he going to fill in his college exams? And we're just projecting way out there. And we have a little girl, we honestly do have a little girl, who has always been enthusiastic. One of the sweetest memories is how she walked as a toddler. She always leaned forward and went as fast as she could everywhere she went because her body would not go as fast as she wanted. So she'd lean. Okay. And when it came to homeschooling, she didn't have any patience. Okay. When I first started teaching her to read, I noticed she would read the first letter and guess the rest because she was in a hurry. She wanted to learn how to read. She wanted to be able to read fast, right? And she didn't want to take the time to sound out words. And so that's partly why I developed my To the Top reading program, which you can get free. I mean, there's no cost to it. You can get it for free on my website, momdelights.com. In the freebie section, you can find To the Top, and it's a free reading program. Well, I developed that because I had to slow her down to sound out so she could actually read. She does not dyslexic. She's just fast. Okay, but as she began math and then grammar and creative writing, she would suffer with bouts of frustration because she wanted to be able, she just saw this huge thing about how she wanted to be writing novels, and here she was, just basic sentences. And so she would get all frustrated with herself, like she couldn't get it all in one day. And I would say, listen, honey, how do you eat an elephant? And she would have to repeat this every time, 1 bite at a time. She'd have to say. And so this is how we have to look at homeschooling. Okay, there is only one way to tackle the mammoth idea of education, and that's 1 bite at a time with our own kids, right? So we must be patient. Every day we read, we write, we do arithmetic, and it seems as though we are only doing this little tiny bit. And sometimes we become discouraged because we don't see a lot of stuff happening. This is especially true if we've gotten really ambitious in our planning. And we got stacks of books and activities, and they're sitting there and they're yelling at us, you're not getting us done. You're not doing it right. Now, this is my real life experience. All right. One of our daughters, who is extremely bright, wanted to start college at 16. I knew she had enough of the 3 R's to do fine, but I was concerned about U.S. history because I never really taught an actual U.S. history course. We just kind of went over different things we were interested in about U.S. history. But I sat her down and I just said, honey, give me a basic outline of U.S. history. And she proceeded to go from the beginning to the current day, and she had everything in line. And I had not taught it to her that way. But the stuff that we had gone over and the stuff she had investigated gave her the education she needed. Because it was bits and pieces that she'd taken along the way and she'd put them into her timeline. And actually, that's the genius of homeschooling. The genius of homeschooling is not all the facts that she was taught. It was the ability for her to take those facts and to analyze them and put them into a whole. That's what real education is, and she could do that. So you see, even though from my perspective, I didn't believe that our little bits and pieces was adding up to much, in the end, it added up to a lot. And this is why I also appreciate the McGuffey readers, because they are so gradual. It's almost imperceptible that you're making any headway. But then when I look at where our child would start, a child would start at the very beginning, like with the very first primers, and they could barely sound out, and then by the time they're up to the 5th McGuffey reader, right, they are beyond graduate school. But it doesn't seem like it's really hard or hurtful. It's kind of like if there's a mountain, right, and it's really like Kilimanjaro or something like that. And if you started at the bottom and you went straight up that mountain, boy, it would be a gut buster, wouldn't it, by the time you got to the top, right? But what do they do with mountains? They either make a road that goes like this, or they make a road that goes around gradually to the top. So that's how homeschooling is. It doesn't look like you're making progress, like, that slight incline. It's a little, harder than just, being on a flat surface, but it's gradual. But eventually you get to the top. So if you have a tiny person in your life, and their writing is wobbling, and they don't seem to be that interested right now, don't give up and don't give in to feeling like you have to really hit the books and really make sure, like 8 hours a day, you're drilling it into them because they're going to be some fantabulous, wonderful, prodigy, that's going to turn out to be the smartest Einstein ever lived or something like that. Here's some interesting facts. Frank Lloyd Wright, which you may or may not like his architecture, but he did rise to the top, and he started out by playing with blocks. In fact, his mother purposely didn't push a lot of academics on him, and he started out with playing with blocks when he was a child, and yet he rose to the top of his profession. Okay, so that's just one example. There are many, many more. Okay, so don't make it hard and grueling, but just stay consistent. There's a lot to be said about consistency, right? So every day you're not doing a lot, but you just do the same thing, and you might add a little challenge here and there, and eventually you end up doing a lot just by your consistency, right? So it will have an effect, I promise you, okay? In a few years you will notice definite change for the better, and if you stay gradual and consistent, you will reach the top, and it will surprise you just how little effort it seemed to take. Okay. Now here's the second way that homeschooling is like an elephant. Okay, and that's in the way we perceive homeschooling. Now, there's an old fable. I don't know how old it is, but it's been around a long time, where some blind men came up to an elephant, and each one was, they were blind, so they were feeling around. Each one had a different part of the elephant, and they described, someone would ask them, what is an elephant like? And the one who had his arm around one of the legs said, oh, it's like a thick, heavy tree. And the one who was on the side, it's flat, with a little bit of roundness, and it's very rough, right? And the one who had the trunk said, it's like a writhing snake, right? And so they each have a different perception of what an elephant is like, because they're not looking at the whole elephant, right? They can't see it. So homeschoolers can look at education the same way, okay? There are so many different perspectives on what education should look like. You know, there's the idea that, you know, you should use textbooks because then they'll be prepared for college in that system. Another person would say, oh no, don't ever use a textbook. Only ever use real books, living books, and don't ever touch a textbook in your life. And, you know, I've been there before, so shh. And you can only use real books. And someone would say, no, don't even just let your child go roam free, and don't ever tell them what to do. And another person will say, you got to spend almost all day outside. That's what you got to do. That's the right way to do homeschooling. And then there's so many other different ways that you can homeschool. Oh, it's all, you know, you got to have some Latin. You got to have some Greek in there. You got to study the ancient stuff. That's how you do it. And that's the lost tools of learning right there. Okay, so we got everything roaming around. And you, as a homeschooler, you're trying to make some decisions. You're trying to figure it out. That's what the blind men are doing. I'm sorry, but we all have our little blind spots, don't we? So I'm used to doing this what works for me. No, this worked for me. No, this worked for me. And you know what? Actually, combining all those things together actually probably will give you a more complete home education for your children, right? So maybe you use a textbook. Maybe you use a lot of living books. Maybe you go outside a lot. Maybe, you know, you put some Latin and some Greek in there, and maybe even talk about the Iliad or something like that. But you put it all together and you enjoy all of it. And you know what? You're so free and you're having such a great time that your kids are getting this huge elephant education as compared to a trunk, or a trunk, or a leg, or a side, or a tail. You know, they're going to get the whole picture, right? And so that's the best way to homeschool, is just to take the whole picture. Now, let me give you an example. And I know you didn't realize this, but you were homeschooled. Even if you went to public school, you were homeschooled too. We're going to specifically talk about how people learn to drive. Okay, so in America, currently, I don't know, maybe in your country it's different, but in America, this is how it goes. Okay, the government department that heads, driving, they provide books. And in this booklet, it basically lays out all the different rules and laws for driving, right? And before you can get a permit to actually get in a car and drive, you have to have read all these things and understand them and take a test that shows that you have comprehended these laws. And then after that, you have to sit in a car and learn to drive an actual car, and then you take a test where someone sits in the car with you and takes you along the road and watches you as you demonstrate that you have these certain skills, right? Now, that is the end game. The end game is to have someone test you so that you can get that license and drive legally. But I got to tell you, getting from the book to the test, that route between those two is totally up to you, isn't it? I mean, the government doesn't say, okay, they don't provide the instructors, they don't provide the cars, they don't do anything. That is up to each individual and each individual family if it's parents and children. So that is homeschooling in a nutshell. You've got this child and you've got him over here at the instructional level, trying to teach him the basic reading, writing, arithmetic. And over here you have success in life. Now, how you're going to get from here to here is going to look different for everybody, isn't it? Because some people, they might, when you're learning to drive, you might go online and maybe you'll watch some videos. Maybe you'll take some online tests. You read the book, of course. You'll talk with people who are driving. You'll watch people who are driving. They'll talk to you. Well, this is why we do this, and this is when you're supposed to do this, and everything. So they'll talk to them. Then they'll go and they'll cram right before the test, and they'll take the test and they'll pass it. And then you got to figure out, how am I going to get all these? And some below a certain age, you have to have so many instructional hours, and it has to be tracked and all that. But past a certain age, you don't even have to have that. So you've got to find somebody that will have the patience to allow you to drive, and you sit there and you drive, and they sit there and they tell you, okay, well, take a left here. No, turn better. No, look at, all those different things. And you have to find maybe a number of people who are willing to do that with you. And you can pay to have someone, sit in the car and do that with you. And a lot of people do that. Will they give you enough instruction? Probably not. You probably still need someone that's willing to sit with you and drive with you. And so these are all different things you do. And eventually you end up taking the test. but you may have gotten there a lot of different ways. Okay, so that's how homeschooling is. And I got to tell you, the driver's instructions, it doesn't try to cover every bit of your life when you're driving. Like, you should really get a better cup holder for your car if you're going to have a drink. And, you should have one with a thing for your phone. They don't do specifics, do they? They're just making sure you're safe. Okay, so that's how education should be. And then we decide from A to B, right? So if you think about it like that, you can do it. People learn how to drive every day. And, if they can do it, you can do it. You can do it with your kids. Maybe you don't have everything set out. Like, I know that when we've taught our kids how to drive, we don't exactly know how it's going to go. We just start, right? You just start, you just make the first step, and then things kind of just fall in place, and eventually it happens. We've taught a lot of kids how to drive. Some kids have had to find out how to drive on their own because, they left home or we moved or whatever. So they had to find a way to get taught how to drive without mom and dad. It does happen that way. It happened with my husband that way. It happened with me that way. Okay? So, but there are ways to get there, and the path is not only clear, but that's okay. You will eventually get there. Just like, when you have your tiny tot and you're supposed to potty train them, you don't know how that's going to work out unless it's kind of rocky, but eventually you get there. So that's how it is. So I hope this helps you. I hope this clears up a lot. I hope it encourages you just to keep consistent. And of course, God's going to lead you, and He's going to open doors, and He's going to close doors, and He's going to say, go over here, don't go over here. That's biblical, and we can count on God to help us every step of the way, can't we? So I hope this blessed you today. And if you want more information, or you need some freebies, I got a lot of free curriculum type stuff and helps on my website, momdelights.com. You can go there and you would find it all in PDF and you can download it. And I have lots of videos and I have all kinds of stuff you can take advantage of. So also for this podcast, if you would like and subscribe, leave some stars, leave a good review, pass it on to someone else, it all helps. And I really appreciate it so much. I love you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.